Okay, so, before I kill myself. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the panel here about Pims, this technology. I'm Marco Melia from Politecnico Torino and coordinator of the Pims City project that you see over here. With me there is Paola, Nikos, and Rodrigo, also from Pims City. They will introduce themselves later. And remotely we have Leonardo Cervera that will also represent the Protection Authority. So, yeah, let me just quickly set the floor here. So Pims City is a European project. You have all the details here, but actually I don't like to present a project like this. I prefer showing the people in the project, involved in the project. This was the first meeting we had before the pandemic in Torino. And yes, we are still alive and here. So happy to be here, again in presence. Pims City is about the internet, is about privacy, is about the data economy around the internet. So it's also about data markets, and privacy, clearly. When we were starting with the project, we kind of identified the current state as mostly as a primitive economy, where you have no choice than just give your data to big companies. There are clear monopolies. You mentioned Google, Facebook, Amazon, but there are many more. And basically you have no control, no opportunity to opt out, right? So that was the starting point. It's a clear problem. I guess people here in the audience is familiar with this. And we had no a clear solution to this. So we actually claim we don't like the arms race again with AD blockers, anti-AD blockers, anti-AD blockers and all that. We think it's not a viable solution. So we don't like this. So we went, we know that the regulators started putting the attention on this, introducing guidelines, barriers. With the technology, and actually we are more on the technological side than the legal and social part. And there was this idea of Pims. Pims are, I guess everybody knows here, hopefully, it's a personal information management system. And it's one of those applications that on slides is super cool, super fine, but building it's a bit more complex. No? It's supposed to allow you to give a fine-grained consent to what data you want to share, with whom, for which purpose, and everything. It's give you the ability to revoke this permission and also the data that you share. So once you share the data with someone, you are supposed to be able to remove the data, get back your data. It's supposed to reward you via payment. So you get part of the share about the business that the company are doing with your data. It's about releasing data in a privacy-preserving manner. So guaranteeing that no personal information leaks when you share the data. And it's a nice dashboard, so you can play with it. You, as a user, can interact with your data, know yourself, and so on and so forth. So as I said, it's super cool idea, but making it fly, it's difficult. And actually today we are here to discuss our experience, but also this problem. So when we're starting, we said there is no one Pims. There will be no one solution. There will be many attempts. This is going to change the economy, so it's not going to be something that is going to show up in 3 months, in 3 years. Probably will take 5 to 10 years to change, because we need to change the entire economic system. So what we did, we said, okay, let's start with building blocks. So we created a PDK, Pims Development Kit, where we identified basic functionalities that allows anyone, or someone that would like to build and explore its own Pim. And then we also now are putting this building block together, and we have Easy Pims that actually is opening the beta testing right now. There are some flyers here if you want to join. And then we are going to do the demonstration so that everybody will enjoy it, the society, the companies, the stakeholders, the regulators, and everybody will be happy. So yeah, this is what I was saying. So EasyPims is now a reality. You can go to easypims.com, register yourself. There is an incentive mechanism to participate. We give you points, see where you share data. And then there is a lottery, sweepstakes, where we give you Amazon cards to incentivize you to start the system. Yeah, I actually would stop here, and we will discuss in the panel what's the lesson we learned and what are the next steps, what are the challenges. Technology, as I said, it's complicated. The idea of revoking the data once you gave it to someone is nice, but making it practical is way more complicated. The value of the data, an iPhone is 800 euros. A megabyte of data, a gigabyte of data is what? So it's complicated. The technology behind is complicated, so this RTB, real-time bidding protocol, it's something that in 50 milliseconds has to do something magic, matching your profile with the advertising profile, giving you the ads. It's complicated. Data portability, bring your Facebook profile, move it to Twitter. Again, on a slide is easy, but not really working. And Facebook is not so collaborative in making you easy to get your data. So it's complicated. So these are good questions, I guess, and we are going to discuss this. Yeah, we have the regulatory framework representative. Leonardo will be the first one speaking. We have Nikos, expert in economy, somehow. We have Rodrigo, expert in technology. He runs a startup on this. We have Paula, finally, that has also the legal expertise and is representing also the data buyers, so the one that would like to get the data. As I said, I will stop here. I just introduced the speaker, so I will leave the floor now to Leonardo. Leonardo is the head of is director of the Office of the Data Protection Authority in Europe. Welcome, Leonardo. I leave the floor to you, and I tell you when your slides are on the screen, so you can start. Meanwhile, this will be a question and answer session, so I will stimulate the debate, but if someone from the audience would like to ask something, don't be shy. It's early in the morning, but raise your hand and ask the question, okay? Okay, Leonardo, we are on the first slide. Whenever you want to start, the floor is yours.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Apologies for not being able to be there for real. Thank you for inviting me to this panel. My name is Leonardo Cervera. I'm the director of the European Data Protection Supervisor. That is the Data Protection Authority of the EU institutions, bodies, and agencies. Next slide, please. As you may know, the EDPS is mandated, among other things, to monitor technological developments relevant for the protection of personal data, and this includes, of course, Pims. Next slide, please. The EDPS published its first opinion of Pims as early as 2016. We also published an update on Pims last year in the form of a Tech Dispatch report, which is an EDPS initiative aiming at explaining emerging developments in technology. We see nowadays a lot of enthusiasm about many technologies that share with Pims the idea to put individuals back into the driver's seat. For a long time, we have been reading about distributed ledger technologies, about the promises of Web3, and we have followed the developments of federated social platforms. Next slide, please. On our side, we are very proud to announce that the EDPS, with the support of other EU institutions, launched last April a public pilot of 2 social media platforms controlled and operated by the EDPS. These platforms prioritize individuals and their data protection rights. They do not allow for transfers of personal data or any advertising or profiling, giving individuals control over the use of their personal data, and all in all, they contribute to the EU strategy for data and digital sovereignty. Next slide, please. I'm additionally happy to make publicly known that the EDPS has recently finalized a framework contract, which is open to all EU institutions, bodies and agencies, to procure Nextcloud, a file sharing and collaboration cloud service from a European service provider, following the Pims standards. The EDPS will use this product in a pilot phase for a year and will ultimately test and assess the market readiness of such tools while giving staff, EU staff, the chance to gain some hands-on experience with this service. We also expect to set this way a new bar in terms of cloud service compliance that we could consider in future audits. Once again, thank you for having me in this panel today, and looking forward to contributing to the discussions on this interesting topic. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Leonardo. I will continue with the introduction of the speaker, so I leave the floor to Paula. Paula is from Spain, from Madrid, from EIB Spain, actually. So she represents also the data markets, the advertising companies that are using the internet. So Paula, the floor is yours, and the green button if you want to go to the next slide.
Thanks a lot, Marco, and thanks a lot, Miguel, also. Well, a brief introduction of myself. I am, as Marco was saying, I am currently the legal director and institutional affairs director at IAB Spain. I'm the spoken person for all the legal issues affecting to this complex sector, and I come from the data protection world. I worked for 8 years happily for the Spanish Data Protection Agency. I remember one of the first persons I met was Leonardo in my beginnings in this world. And during all these years, I have had a focus on policy issues, but also I've been advising all kind of companies on how to comply. I combine my activity with teaching in the university and in the Instituto de Empresa in Madrid. And focusing more on what IAB is, if anyone still doesn't know, is an international association. It's in 47 countries. In Spain, it was founded in 2011, and our focus is to grow, to make the advertising grow in a very transparent and robust manner. And from the legal perspective, here my colleague Miguel and I work all day in this, is try to balance the regulation with the practice, and to find this approach, and also to explain to the regulators that how this environment works, because sometimes it is there are like misleading concepts. And we make studies, and we contribute for the trust in this sector. And IAB members are the AdTech environment, MarTech, agencies, advertisers, everyone that has a word on this sector. So we try to work all together in white books and in standards in order to make this very difficult environment in the sense of very different stakeholders with very different needs work together to protect to the users, and also to use data in a good way. And I think I can give the floor to the next speaker.
Yeah. So thanks, Paula. Thanks a lot. Next is Nikos Lautaris. Nikos is from Madrid also. He works in IMDEA. He's a research center in there. And before, you may remember him because he was running in Telefonica, the
Data Transparency Lab.
Data Transparency Lab. Yeah, thanks. I need a coffee. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Marco.
Come on.
You
You have to.
This one. Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Nikos Lautaris. I'm a research professor at the IMDEA Networks Institute in Madrid, where I run the Data Transparency Group. I used to run the Data Transparency Lab, so I'm not very creative in terms of acronyms. And what I do with my team at IMDEA, largely we are studying problems that relate to the data economy. I come from almost 10 years of research in the area of privacy, and at some point when I moved from industry to academia, it occurred to me that many of the privacy problems that I used to study are in reality results of broken underlying economics of information. So I came to Madrid to set up this group to study issues related to the new data economy. With my student, Santiago, who is here in the audience, we are doing a lot of things in the area. We have published a report, an analysis of business models of data marketplaces and personal information management systems, data vaults. They have a lot of names. We have identified more than 200 of them. There is a lot of activity in the area, both from the industry, funding agencies, regulation, data spaces, GaiaX. There are many things happening. Lots of excitement, but like all new economies, we believe there are some existential challenges before such new ideas can take off. So we are studying with my team at IMDEA and with many collaborators, including colleagues at Pims City, several fundamental questions that relate and challenges that relate to the data economy. And at a very high level, these are summarized in this slide. So we are looking from the viewpoint of data buyers, how to select what data set to buy and at what price. There's an entire ecosystem of data marketplaces in which data owners advertise their data sets, they ask for different prices. And then data buyers that are typically organizations that have some idea, some business model or some machine learning algorithm, but they are missing the data to drive it. They browse these catalogs and they decide whether to buy or not something. So there are many questions over there. At which data sets should you buy when there are multiple alternatives? At which price? Should you buy multiple data sets and combine them? And there is a chicken and egg problem over there because when you have a machine learning algorithm and you want to train it, you only know how good the data set is after you have used it to train the algorithm. So there's an interesting problem on how can you decide what to buy and which price. Going on the other side, at the side of the data seller, there is the big problem of how to price a data set, how to set a price that makes sense. And we are looking at that, doing many things. I will refer to them later on. Below the economics layer of the problem, at what price to bid or how to price a particular data set, there is an even more fundamental problem, which is that of data set ownership, right? So there are many companies. I used to work in a big company that invested millions in installing probes to collect mobility data and then sanitize this mobility data and create a service that was selling anonymized aggregated analytics for different cities in Europe. And this is a costly business, but when you go out and you sell the product, the result of this service, which is data, there is the problem that somebody can come and buy this data set and then go out on a different data marketplace and resell it at a fraction of the price and undercut you, which basically means that there are issues related to data set ownership and rights of the commercial providers that create these data sets. And there is the issue of piracy that looks a little bit like what happened with media, with music, with movies in the past. So I'm not an economist, I'm a computer scientist, but I believe that if you cannot protect ownership, it's difficult to build a robust economy on something. So the data set ownership, we believe, is a big thing. And then there is the marketplace design problem. There are 200 different data marketplaces that we have identified, different protocols, different APIs, different rules. So for the economy to grow, these things will need to be federated somehow. And there are actions being taken along this, but it's still an open and challenging problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikos. Last but not least, Rodrigo. Rodrigo is from Argentina. He funded a startup in the area of Pims, Whipson, and he is now CEO of the company, but he has also a technical background, so the floor is yours to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Marco. So I'm Whipson CEO. With our team, we have built different Pims. Initially, we developed a data marketplace where more than 100,000 users were able to share their data with companies to monetize their data, especially in Europe. We have more than 250,000 data transactions. Also, then we found a problem, well, chicken and egg problem, but also other problems, and it was how to empower users to really own this data, how you can monetize something that you really don't know what you have. So we built a privacy antivirus app to allow people to discover which companies have their data and which data these companies have. And afterwards, we discovered that these people were able to get this transparency, and then we gave them control, being able to request their data, and we realized that companies were not complying there. So we started building also solutions for companies so they can give for their users, their clients, their data rights. In respect to Pim City, we are working a lot in the personal consent management and the trading engine, bringing our, let's say, know-how in technology, but also from a perspective, business perspective idea and our experience before with this. Just to know, we launched our data marketplace before 2018, so it was before GDPR. So we passed through all building these Pims during all the creation of the new regulation. And about what we are really doing now, so we are trying to solve this equation. These are two things that we believe that nobody will say that no. One of the things that is data is the new oil, and there are things that we are data. So how we can really put all these two things together, we believe that there are companies that are allowing users to not share so much data, so to very privacy focused, but we believe that data is the new oil and it will continue in that way. So if that's the future, how we can empower also users to own their data and build a more transparent ecosystem. So that's why our vision is to transform this data, not in oil, but in, let's say, like in green energy. So we believe that this new type of data have to be the consented data, and we are trying to change the technology. So very focused on privacy infrastructure to create this new type of data.
Okay, thanks a lot. So just to, as an icebreaker, I will do a first round of questions, but again, if anyone in the audience has different ideas, would like to share their ideas or questions, feel free to do it. So I will actually start from Leonardo. So we have seen that the Pims are around since about 5 years, the idea, and there have been a lot of companies. Nikos said they counted more than 200. Don't know many of them are still alive, but you know, it's complicated. And since you represent the privacy policy maker here in Europe, I was kind of asking myself if there is any regulatory developments that can help in supporting the Pims idea in the case of Pims.
Thank you, Marco. Indeed, the European Union has been working on a number of acts that support the case of Pims. A good example is a Digital Governance Act adopted by the Council of the European Union on 16th of May and awaiting publication in the official journal before becoming applicable in late 2023. This law opens up to the development and deployments of Pims, because the DGA refers to intermediation services between data subjects that seek to make their personal data available and potential data users, including making available the technical or other means to enable such services, and in particular enabling the exercise of the data subject's rights provided in the GDPR. So the DGA provides for rules in this respect, and this is very likely to foster the use of these services and contribute to ensuring that data subjects have better control over access and use of their data in accordance with European Union law. Also, recently, another example is the agreement on the Network and Information Security, NIS2 directive, which reinforces the security requirements. So these reinforced security requirements will also make easier to achieve the goals intended with Pims. So we are working on supporting Pims. My presence in this panel is precisely to support this, but of course we need to do more to foster these new technologies, and we will talk about it a little bit later. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So this moves me to you, Paula. Because changes in regulatory are impacting probably also the business of companies that you kind of represent. So one of the challenges that on your side you see about these changes, how this will reflect on the current data economy in the internet. If you can comment on this.
Thanks, Marco. Yeah, as Leonardo was mentioning, this is this Data Governance Act that is like a game changer, introducing the new players as the data intermediaries. There is also the Digital Contracts Directive that introduces also a very, so to say, conflicting article, or that says that it can be that services and goods can be paid with data as a counterpart. So we also have this looming of our heads e-privacy regulation that it's been like 4 years discussions in Brussels. So currently there are we would say like shaken environment of laws that are affecting and having a very huge impact on this sector, and we should not forget, for example, also the DMA that will make mandatory for the gatekeepers and for the players to give access to some of their data, and to give and to make interoperable this data with other businesses. So we have like a bunch of laws that are changing or are working with our Holy Bible, that is the GDPR. So let's see how we can manage to work with all of them and to adapt to the new age of the processing of data, with all this data that comes from the data strategy of the European Union, and how we apply it to the PIM information systems, and how it works also with advertising ecosystem, with all these thousands of companies working together.
Yeah. Thanks, Paula. And actually, this brings me back to the question we touched. What's the value of the data? So one of the challenges that we have is that, as I was saying, now the iPhone is 800 euros. A 50 euro bill is 50 euros. But 1 gigabyte of data, 1 gigabyte of my past location, 1 gigabyte of my, I don't know, browsing history, my gigabyte of my health history, is it worth how much? I know, Nikos, if you have any answer to these questions, and how can this change the marketplace of data and affecting this?
Well, I have some ideas, but I think it's going to take a lot of time before we...
Now you have 3 minutes, so...
Yeah, I have 3 minutes. I think it's going to take decades before we all agree on what is the value of data, because this economy is new. We know the value of the iPhone over a car, over a shirt, over anything else because we've been using it for a lot of time. But the machine learning revolution is on the initial stages. New ideas are coming to change the way that we do things, from improving our health to improving transportation and fabrication of goods. There are algorithms that can do magic, but they need data to run, right? So the data, rightly, has been compared to oil for the new industrial revolution. And although the metaphor is useful in many ways, it's also very misleading, right? Because you cannot send oil across the world or store it or process it at zero cost. But you can do that with data, right? So data, you can copy it at almost zero cost. With oil, you cannot do it. If you use it to run a car, that's it, it's gone. With data, you can create as many copies as you want, which is hinting to why pricing data is a complex problem, right? So because it has all the properties of digital information, zero cost of processing, storing, transmitting, and so on. That's one. The second thing is that, unlike oil, 1 liter of oil, if you put it in the same car under the same driving condition, will take you to the similar distance. With data, it's not the case. It's called a commodity, but it's the opposite of a commodity. I mean, if you give a mobility data set to me and my students, we may write a nice paper. If you give it to a huge company, a mobility data set, they may decide where to place their next 1,000 restaurants in a new continent, right? So, which is an effect that has different economic consequences. So different users of the same data may result in producing vastly different profits, which has a big consequence on the difficulty of setting a single price on a data set, right? The other thing that is very different is that when you are a buyer and you want to put gasoline or diesel in your car, you don't need to be convinced about how good the diesel or the gasoline is. Usually it's good enough, right?
Or bad enough.
Or bad enough, right? But you don't need to be convinced about it's going to do what you want to do. But when it comes to buying data, it is not the case. You have a machine learning algorithm with your current data is getting to 80% accuracy. You want to get it to 95%, and somebody is telling you that he has a data set that can help your algorithm get there. How do you know? You will only know if you have access to the data, but you need to decide without having access to the data. So it's convincing somebody that the product is useful is not trivial. And last but not least, there is this thing that I say that authorship and ownership is not obvious for data. So this week, Top Gun 2 is coming on the cinemas. With media content, when you see an ebook or a movie or a song, you know who the owner is, right? But with data, it's not the case. If somebody gives you a mobility data set, maybe the owner of this mobility data has been a telco that has been extracting mobility information from CDRs, or a map application, or a social network that collects check-ins, or even banks have mobility data because they see people going to ATMs and so on. So the fact that it's your data and proving that it's your data is not obvious how to do this thing. There is the ownership issue. And the combination of all these challenges that I mentioned make pricing the data a very hard problem. And again, with my team, we do a lot of things in the area. I have 6 people doing PhDs and postdocs in the area. I would love to tell you the solution, but for now, I'll just stick to trying to convince you that it's a difficult problem.
Yeah, there is a question over there. Just take a mic.
Thank you for your presentation. So I'm a data protection lawyer, and I want to jump directly on your speech about the evaluation of the value of data. I understood that your ambition is not only for one country, but maybe Europe and at international level. So as I know, data protection has a real big link, a deep link with the conception in different in different law, in different states. What are your plans about convincing a state that okay, we can put a value on data when we know that some country consider data as a fundamental right and something that we cannot put a value on? Thank you.
Yeah, I understand. Thanks for the question. I know where you're coming from. Basically, I'm not looking into this problem at all. As I said before, I spent 10 years working in privacy. That's why, the previous times that I was in CPDB, I was talking about different stuff. I don't look at this. The questions that I'm asking is, in a particular area, under a particular legal framework, assuming that a number of data sets can be traded under the current law, assuming that this thing has been cleared, how do we price them? Now, I understand that you are right. In some places, they will say, don't sell data, data is free. In other places, they will say, no, data is a product, and the companies need to invest in collecting and sanitizing and making accessible the data. And therefore, the rights of the data owners need to be protected, otherwise there will be no economy. So this question, whether you believe A or B, is not for me to decide. Each market decides on its own, but having taken this decision, for cases in which they see a commercial use of data, we are asking these questions and trying to come up with an answer. But again, this answer is not going to be applicable everywhere.
Yeah, there was actually a second question over there.
Good morning. Thank you very much for your interesting story. I think it's very important for the future. My name is Corrie Ebbers. I'm from the Netherlands. I work as an independent privacy lawyer, mainly for the government or the local government. I do have two questions. The first one is a bit naive, I think. Years ago, on this conference, there was somebody who said, the more data you have, the cheaper they are. My second question is, in my experience, I always talk about the rights of the subject, the rights compared to their own data. I can never explain ownership for the data subject, ownership of data. I can only talk in rights. So those were my two questions.
Maybe Rodrigo, the first question, the more data you have, the cheaper it is. Is this true or not? I mean, also in your experience with your first Pims and 100,000 people there.
Yeah, so it's in a way true, because as Nikos was saying, like, you can copy this data and become something that start like losing its value. But yes, from a perspective of data rights, to answer also the question, is what I see in the future is that, from an entrepreneur perspective, of course, but it's like people should have their own data vaults, and as today we have APIs to connect data from different places, to move data from one place to another. What I see is that each one will have its own data vault with its own API key, and in that way, companies will not be buying data but renting data. One thing is because about the data rights. If you buy data, then how the people can exercise their rights and ask to delete their information. So it's different if you rent the data, so have more sense. And then the value of the data is not each piece of data, but how complete, let's say, a profile of a person can be. And I see then companies making like organizations and like a club of thousands of people that connect to this like club, and then a company can access to this data from the people. So from a right perspective, I believe that that's the future.
I don't know if someone would like to add something, Leonardo or Paula, just feel free to answer also. We have another question. Yes, please.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for the very thoughtful presentation. My name is José Paiva. I work as a privacy analyst for Planview in Stockholm. And my question is way more naive. I haven't read the ADPS opinion on this project, so probably the answer is already there. But as I wasn't familiar with this kind of projects, probably the question is very naive. But looking at the way consent is structured in the GDPR, do you think that the fact that the user will get money from giving their consent affects the fact that the consent was freely given?
Sorry, can you repeat the question because there was some noise here?
Yes, sorry. So I was asking, looking at the way that consent is structured in the GDPR.
Okay.
If you think that the fact that the data subject is getting money out of giving consent affects the fact that that consent is freely given.
Okay.
This is
Yeah, Paola, probably you're the best.
I think this is a question that 1 million question, and how the lawyers say it depends, no? It depends on the information is given. It depends on how the company is compliant with the regulation. It depends on the seriousness that it takes with the GDPR. So it is true that it's more or less easy to get consent in an illegal way. I mean, and the example we could take it from the cookies world, no? But I think that with the GDPR and with all the instruction it gives with the Article 13 and the information and these kind of things, I think that there is a chance and there is no this false dichotomy that privacy and business, no? So in the end, it's a matter of being conscious of this. But I think that we still need to work a lot with the transparency issues. For example, in Spain, there is a project called Consent Commons that is based on icons, in which the user can know if the data is being communicated to third parties and what are the purposes that it's being used. And I think it's easier for the user to take a look and to decide and then to make like an informed choice on this issue. No? So I think we still have work to do. But I think that we need, I don't know if the other colleagues may think the same, but I don't think we don't need more rules on this. I think we need a better application and a better understanding of the ones we have.
Yeah, if I can add something, I'm an engineer. Actually, I'm a professor in engineering school, which is even worse. What I found it difficult with my daughters is to let them understand that when they use Instagram or whatever they use, they are selling, giving pieces of the information, and they simply don't care. Mm-hmm. So it's like a commodity. They open the fridge, there is the milk inside. They don't think that the milk is mom or daddy that brought the milk there and worked to get the milk there. So for them, it's difficult. The concept of the ownership, the concept of the value of the data, it's simply there. No, it's something that is part of the life. So that's the real challenge. So how to make people aware that they are the data, we are the data, and the data is a value. And I'm not one of those guys that say, I want to live in an island with no interconnectivity because otherwise they steal my life. I have a Facebook profile because I'm old, and I use it, so that's fine. The problem is how to convince people that there is an opportunity also for people there. And the data of a single person is totally useless. The data of a community, as Rodrigo was saying, of a club he was mentioning, it's where there is the value. And that's where companies are working on. I mean, I was checking there, Google, Meta, and Microsoft are all top sponsors here, and Apple, luckily. Different views. And those have billions of profiles, not 1, 2, 3, 5. So that's one of the challenges. Sorry for the long comment. Yeah, there was a question over in the back.
Let me stand up so you can see me. I'm Simon Hania. I'm a data protection officer at Uber. I have a question related to pricing of data, because you were talking about trying to find a method or thoughts about pricing of data. And I'd be interested in what kind of metric you want to use, because we normally use currency, but currency is tied indirectly to the value of precious metals, which are scarce in itself, while data isn't. So I think there's an inherent impossibility to price data with money, or is there a way to bridge that? So what will be the new currency of the data economy to not link it to property, because it doesn't fit, it doesn't compute. It's like dividing by zero. So how are we going to do that? And maybe actually you just gave a glimpse, the value of the data may actually be the experience your daughter is getting by using Instagram. That's the value she gets back. But apparently there's more value. How do we not necessarily capture that value, but how do we express that value, and how do we put the new, not the new oil, but the new money on it? And I challenge you to not use the word blockchain. Thanks.
I don't know, Nikos, it seems targeting you, right?
Well, I agree with some of the things you say, but not with everything. So the notion of value exists, right? It's self-evident that there is value. There are companies that want to acquire data to do something. Okay, so value is there. And there are many use cases and fantastic things that can be done in different domains, from transportation to health to solving societal problems. There is this wonderful book. One of the reasons that I went to this area is that because I read this book, Who Owns the Future, from Jaron Lanier, that is talking about many of these things. Currencies, money, whether it's fiat money or whether it's giving back in kind or the incentives, I agree, it doesn't have to be monetary incentives. There are other incentives and there are other ways to reward for giving access to something that is deemed valuable, right? So I'm not in favor of a particular new currency and so on. And then the other point that you made is that because there's no scarcity in digital data, it's not that, this liter of gasoline is either mine or yours, we can all have it. This does not mean that you cannot build economics. There exist economics of digital information. It's like a different universe. It's like a universe where the basic laws of physics do not apply, because with material goods, if we hold an auction, we have one version of this, only one can get it, right? With data, it's different. All of us can get it, right? But this does not mean that we should not study what is the value and how to price it. So the questions and the challenges are there. It's just that the basic laws are in many ways very different from the laws that we are used to in other things. But this we already knew, right? Because we have been trading digital content, movies and e-books and songs. They have similar properties. So these things have been studied for a number of times. But data, my point that I tried to make before is that trading them and pricing them and coming with robust economics for them has all the complexities of the digital economy, of things that we already were trying to price, like movies, okay? But they have extra challenges that come from the nature of data, which is that a movie, if both of us watch the movie, we're going to enjoy it similarly, like it has similar value for two people, a movie or a song or a book. Okay, somebody maybe like it more than somebody else and may enjoy it twice as much. But with data, the difference of the value that can be extracted from a data set cannot be only 2 times or 3 times between somebody and somebody else. It can be orders of magnitude. A company can extract 1 million times more value from a data set than another company. And this thing is making the problem more complex. And it's making it even more unlikely that simple solutions from economics, like a fixed price for everyone, will work. So one of the things, for example, that we are studying now is how can you apply usage-based economics in data. Basically, instead of saying that this data costs X, you'll say it costs X every time you use it to train a particular machine learning algorithm. So somebody that is using it more will pay more. So the simplest economic rules for pricing things work with products that have simple economics. For commodities, and again, commodities is a wrong term for data, that are so complex, we will need to come with better rules, but with rules that people can still understand, right? That you don't need to have a PhD in economics in order to set them. So, and this is a very big challenge.
Okay, there is another question on the back there, then we can come here in the front.
Hello, Álvaro Feal from India. At the beginning, you were saying oil is the new data. Data is the new oil, right? But you were also saying that we are data. So I guess, therefore, we are the new oil. And if we are the resource in which companies are going to be building their future, I'm wondering what is their incentive to treat us as a resource fairly? Thank you.
Yes, the answer is yes. That's why we were saying we are trying to solve this equation, because I believe that nobody will deny those two headlines. It's I really believe that. So maybe to answer your question is, how people would be able to be part of this data ecosystem. As I was saying before, there are some solutions that is to avoid to get more data. I believe that there are awesome, those type of solutions, to use other browsers or that are privacy preserving, but we cannot avoid that more and more data will be collected by companies, and that data will be multiplied inside the company. So that's why I believe that something that you cannot duplicate is the consent. So what we see is that all the data moving around, but the consent is unique. So the way I believe that this new data ecosystem have to work is not around data itself, but we need to start attaching data and consent. I realize that I not answer 100% your question, but I don't have an answer, a real answer for that. But yes, what I believe is that we need to attach more data and consent. It's a very big challenge, but I believe that that's the way where people, that we should give so people can be part of this data ecosystem.
Yeah, actually, I don't know if Leonardo, you want to add something, possibly eventually commenting on what are the contribution that the authorities can do in this field. So how to let people control the data, the consent that Rodrigo was mentioning. I don't know if there is any initiative in this direction.
Thank you, Marco. I hesitate to take the floor on the interesting discussions you had, because this is a very complex issue, and I don't think data protection authorities should, we should refrain from being dogmatic. I think we have to remain open-minded and to listen more than to speak, to better serve the society we are, in which we are operating. It is obvious, self-evident that data has a value. That's clear. Otherwise, we would not be receiving so many IT applications for free. We are receiving all these applications for free because they generate data that they have a value for those companies. They are not charging us for products that otherwise we would be paying. But this is something completely different from the idea that data has a price, or that data can be put in the market. You don't need money to process data. You don't need money to collect the data. You just need to do it in accordance with the law. So if you have a legitimate interest to collect, process, even to further disseminate the data, you don't need money for that. You just can do it. However, if you may have a lot of money, but you may not be able to buy legally the data. So let's be careful with this in this debate. Let's stick to what the GDPR says, and let's discuss this issue without dogmatism, but without deviating too much from the concept of the dignity of individuals. Love, you cannot buy, but privacy you cannot buy neither. So this is something that is outside the market. But anyway, responding to your question, we have indeed, there's many things that supervisory authorities can do to contribute to efforts on MIPS. The first thing, obviously, is to raise awareness, public awareness, about the benefits of these technologies, and this is precisely what we are doing today. So this is effective and should be continued. But there is also another important action that data protection authorities can take to promote the use of Pims, which is enforce the law. Again, in particular against those big tech companies that are benefiting primarily for business models that are based on tracking individuals' behaviors and massive profiling of people, because this is precisely the opposite world at what we are trying to achieve with Pims. So recently, the EDPS issued a reprimand to an European agency of the European Union for their use of a collaborative cloud solution from a large-scale provider, because they did not conduct a good DPIA and before deploying this solution, and because we were not convinced that they have put in place sufficient control measures about the processing of personal data. So it is by doing these things that we incentivize big companies to look in the other direction and to put in the market other products that are more compliant with data protection. I hope this answers your question.
Yeah, thanks a lot, actually. If I can build on this, you said big companies, you're targeting big companies. What about small companies? Because for a small company, all the effort in be compliant with the law, do DPIA and manage, collect the rights, it's a cost. So for a big company, it's part of their business. But for small companies, this is becoming way too complicated. I mean, is this eventually going to the risk that only big companies can afford the cost, and then small companies will basically not be able to do it, and then they will be kicked out of the market? Is there this risk or not?
You're asking me?
Yeah, I mean, I was seeing you on the monitor. There's a monitor right there. So
I don't like to monopolize really the discussions. I prefer that others also speak. Thank you. I can comment later. But
okay, no, that's fine. That's fine. I don't know if you have any comment on this.
I think that proposals as the Digital Markets Act is bringing this issue on the table. I mean, the fact that big companies, that big techs, that the walled gardens and, well, the gatekeepers indeed need to share this data with smaller companies. I think that not in a near future, but maybe in a few time is going to make easier for the companies. And I think that the Data Act and the Data Governance Act, that all this new regulation go in this way to make the medium and medium small and medium enterprises to have more access to data, because of course they have no muscle to have this big or this important processing data. No, but I think that in Europe, if I am not wrong, the focus is they have the focus on bringing this data to more people, to more companies, in order to take all the benefits for all, not just a few one.
Nikos,
yes, Marco, I think you touched on a very interesting question. It's true that the big companies they have an advantage because they have more data. You know, you go from these huge internet services that have a lot of data, but there are also other big companies that have a lot of data. You know, banks, telcos, insurance companies, many companies of this sort. They have a lot of data, but it so turns out that there are many small companies that have ideas. You know, there are many cases in which there is a small company that has a fantastic business model and the capability to build a machine learning algorithm to take mobility data or financial data and do something that is useful. So there is an interesting interplay. In many cases, big companies have the data, but they don't necessarily have the ideas or the expertise to monetize it. Small companies have the capacity and the ideas, and they don't have the data, which pretty much points to that there needs to be a way for data to leave the data controller in a GDPR, privacy-preserving, fair manner, and go to the ones that can develop new services upon it. And this is like an open, if somebody solves this problem in a good enough manner, it cannot be, this is a big problem, right? So it can never be solved perfectly, and there will always be complaints, and there will always be frictions. But if you manage to somehow solve it good enough, there may be an entire new breed of services and applications that will appear and may revolutionize the economy if you allow the people with the ideas to have the right data that they need in order to materialize them. And this, I think, is a big challenge for everyone.
Yep. There is a question. We come back to you. There is a question over there. Mike is coming.
Thank you. My name is Michael. I'm a PhD researcher in UCD. And just picking up on, as an engineer with a whole lot of daughters, the Instagram question. My daughters get great value out of using Instagram, and they're very happy to use it. Fantastic. And that brings me back to the idea of value. So value, we give something away to get something. So when we buy an iPhone, I understand very well what 800 euros means. And somebody says, come to CPDP, I understand what 3 days means. When somebody says, click here, I don't understand what price I am paying. So I love the idea of being paid for my browsing history or my location history, fine. But what am I giving away, and how can a PIM help me to understand, given that we click on browsers 100, 200 times a day, can somebody aggregate that information and feed that back to me in a way that I can understand? That would be my question.
If I can add something. So that's one of the things that we are looking to with Easy Pims. So we came with the idea of transparency tag, which then Apple copied. But we had the idea before. So with the transparency tag, it's a means to check which company you're giving the data. So what's their rating in a simple manner, so from 1 star to 5 stars. And we have 2 ways to measure it. One is the company self-declaring. That's what Apple is doing. So my app is collecting this, and it tells you this app is collecting this data. And the other one, we check it directly on the website they use, the domains they use, the third party they use, so automatically inferring what business they have. We thought this as a means to educate people to check Instagram versus TikTok, or you name it, or Polito and Imdea, which is more trustable, which is more... That's something that should be presented very easily, like the tag, something that people read and knows how many calories you are going to eat if you get this. And so in the Pim City project, we went into this direction. It's going to fly, I don't know. But probably it's something that goes in this direction of trying to educate people in knowing the risk or the benefit of having business, because in a sense you do give data to this company, so you have a business with it, more transparently. That's why we call it transparency tag. I don't know if someone would like to add something here.
Yes, Marco. So it's a very valid question. I mean, in my previous life when I was doing privacy, we're funding different research group in the world to answer questions like exactly the question you made. And we had funded a group that built a browser add-on that when you were going to Facebook, you were seeing in a pop-up on your browser the amount of money that you were generating from Facebook. So these things experimentally in research, they have been built, and it was an easy way to do it, kind of easy. You can tap on the actual protocol that the advertisers are using to buy impressions and so on, collect the prices that are being paid for you and show them to the user. So the user can start appreciating that by clicking here, I'm generating this amount of money. That's the first aspect, the first comment I would like to make. And the second one, you know, whenever I was speaking about privacy, people were telling me the usual stuff that we don't care about privacy, we don't understand privacy, and so I had made like some slides about other things that societies didn't care about. So if you are old enough to be around in, you know, in the 80s, you would know that people were smoking. We would be smoking here, right? Had it been the 80s, and we would be smoking in the plane that brought us here. So societies are doing things like smoking, like giving toys, dangerous toys to kids. So I did a historical review of things that societies used to do, that if you look at them now, you're gonna laugh. So yes, societies do things, but eventually learn. They take some time, but if there is a problem, eventually they figure it out. And I think that these things that we are discussing will be the type of things that eventually we will catch up with. Okay, it may take some time. They don't happen from one year to the next, but they do happen if there is a problem.
And one more thing there also is, from my understanding, is that to understand the value of data, we have to go more deep and to try to separate the different type of data, because we are trying to say, okay, data, but it's like geolocation data, transaction data. So I believe it's very difficult to give value for something that is really, really big. Like if you think of different type of data, it's like a new type of industry. So what I believe is that to understand also what value you can get from your data, you need very specific use cases. And this is very attached with the thing before. Yes, I believe that small companies, startups can give these specific use cases because they want to give value in a specific or solve a specific problem, and they can use data from big companies to show you this value. And it's one of the perspectives that we are using now with Pims City. We said, okay, from all this data, which type of data now users can share and try to give one type of value. Are we solving the whole problem? No, but we need to make like the first steps. If not, we will be discussing like forever, like the value of data or what will happen. So I think that we need more startups or more people like thinking, giving value, but specific value, like small at the beginning. But in that way, we will start finding the correct path.
There was a question here in the front. Over there.
Thank you. But before asking my question, I just wanted to thank you, because before this panel, I didn't hear before about your project. And now I have a lot of expectation to this project to help, for example, the GDPR, and to help GDPR with some of rights, like for example, control the consent, or maybe the data portability of the data subject, or also about cookies, third-party cookies, how to be sure that the consent we are giving on cookies will be controlled, and that's really nice. And now I really appreciate your last comment about separate the type of data, for example. But here my question is more about separate aggregate or non-personal data to personal data. If you are talking about aggregate or personal or non-personal data, I totally agree about the idea of put a price, and that doesn't matter because the GDPR will not apply. But the GDPR is also the regulation of free flow of data. So it means that you cannot apply kind of price. You need to find alternatives. And one alternative may be, for example, to reimburse the cost to company that, for example, if a company generate a database, instead of say, okay, I will sell those data at that price, maybe you can put an alternative as, okay, we can reimburse, so the data recipient, the future user of data can reimburse all the costs the previous one bear to create the database, for example. And also, I remember a nice decision of the German Competition Authority in analyzing how to put a price on personal data. For example, when we talk about using a social network, how to to evaluate the value of data. So his reasoning was the following: okay, let's say as a user you expect some quality of services. The company, as for example Facebook, the company collect enough data to let you expect better services? So it's the question about data minimization. And there's also the value of the data. So if you, as a user, you say, okay, to have a good services, I expect that company to collect that amount, that quantity of data, then it's okay. But if the company collects too much data on you, then what is expected for the services, that's a problem. So that's kind of matrix for, evaluate the data. It's not only a question of price. Thank you.
Yeah. I take this more as a comment than as a question, right? So I think we have time for one last question and then we can wrap up. No?
Mm-mm.
No. Hello, my name is Robert and I have also an engineering profile. I have checked the websites you were mentioning earlier on, and I found on the website of Marco on EasyPims, Google Ads, YouTube cookies, there was no cookie banner, nothing mentioned in the privacy policy. Nicolaus presented the IMDEA website, Google Ad, cookies, no cookie banner. Rodrigo's website on Vipsen has also Google Ads, sharing data with Facebook and Google Analytics. There's a cookie banner, but you also have these cookies if you do not click anything. So I don't think that this is intentional, of course, this data sharing with these large-scale platforms. But I wonder now, who do you believe can we expect actually to limit this data sharing and give actual control to people when also Pims researchers struggle to stop that data sharing? Maybe you have an answer for that. And now that I have shared data through your websites with these platforms, I would also like to know, can I get paid for that now?
So there is a lot of noise here, so I'm not sure. So you went and you saw that some website is contacting Google services. That's perfectly fine. I mean, contacting IP address doesn't mean that you are sharing data with this. We are downloading a font from Google, full stop. No data sharing, no data collection. So this idea that you connect to a guy that is bad by definition, I don't like it. Yeah. The data we collect is perfectly stored in our deployment. Your data stays there. That's the privacy data safe that we are building. The fact that you connect to and send a ping message to someone is nothing. So if I got it correct, because again, there was a bit of noise here. The point about cookies, we did a study like 3 or 4 years ago. We checked how many websites were having a privacy banner and how many were contacting tracking services after or before people accepted the privacy banner. And we found that 80% of the website simply were asking you, click here, and if you click or not, if you would do it before or later, they were in any case contacting tracking services. That was worrisome. And that brings to the complexity of the technology behind this. I'm sure those companies were not doing this on purpose. It's terribly complicated to make things work in practice. So having an idea, stop cookies before, check the consent before, it's easy. Do it now, it's very complicated. Just a comment on this. I don't know if you have
Can I add something? Yeah. First of all, many of the fundamental issues that we are discussing in the project and in this panel, they go beyond tracking, okay? The issues of what is the value of information and so on, it has nothing to do with tracking. But you got a point here, and I understand that, yes, indeed, you may go to the website of our project or maybe of our organizations, and maybe they don't have a banner, and I completely believe that. In 3 weeks, we are presenting in Barcelona in a conference a huge measurement study that we ran for 2 years, where we went and we checked governmental websites. So we went to websites in which every citizen has to go to do things like submit your taxes, right? And we checked hundreds of websites that were official websites for releasing COVID-related information operated by governments, and we looked at who was tracking there, whether they were setting cookies, whether they were putting banners, what was the expiry time of cookies. And it's amazing that even governmental websites were full of tracking cookies, right? So this is a reality. It's happening everywhere. Even governments and institutions that are working around privacy, they do not follow necessarily the letter of the law. It's happening big time in many countries, and I don't know how to do something about it actually, but it's happening. So I believe that this might be happening for our own website as well. The reasons, there are multiple reasons, right? Oftentimes there are contractors that come and build these websites, and they are using software frameworks and libraries that have implicit tracking and nobody knows about it. There are a bunch of reasons that this thing may be happening. Yeah. I don't know how to solve it, you know.
No, it's complicated.
Yeah, it's complicated.
The technology is complicated.
But it's funny that even governments, their own websites, are full of things that should not be there.
I'm pretty sure. Okay, so thanks a lot for staying with us. If you want, there are some flyers here about the platform that we are running. If you want to be beta tester, there are a lot of bugs still, but we are opening it. So thanks a lot again, and thanks to all the panelists here, and to Leonardo for remotely joining us. And enjoy the conference. Thank you. Thanks.